So the question being asked is in-country versus offshoring, right? So the question is either or. That's the question that's being framed, and let's analyze the drivers for them, right? So my talk is divided into four portions. The big picture, and what are the drivers, the choices and consequence, and conclusion, right? These days, everyone needs to use is AI, so you have to start with that, right? So I asked Gemini a couple of questions. Name the top 25 pharmaceutical companies. What is the cost of goods and R&D expense as a part of revenue, right? And what's the average? So it was smart enough to answer and exclude companies that are CDMOs versus pharmaceutical companies, but on an average, about roughly 50% goes into cost of goods of manufacturing in terms of 27%, and 20% goes into R&D, right? So, and then the prompt, you can continue to play with that. So, but the bottom line is 50% goes into cost of goods and R&D. Now, in a pharmaceutical life cycle, early stage, you have R&D development where you need time and cost and quality, and you have to balance between the three, and often quality is non-compromisable. Therefore, it's time and quality. And on the late stage, once the product reaches a certain maturity, COGS becomes important if you have to compete with generics and biosimilars. So what are the key drivers in putting a manufacturing facility in the world? There are many drivers. One is economics, right? And the economics could be tax incentives for research or tax incentives for manufacturing. So that's done by many countries globally, including different states in the US. And then the policy, right? Industrial policy in terms of national security, especially post-COVID, where there's a need for biologic manufacturing globally. It's a national security issue, as well as IP security in terms of keeping the IP proliferation to minimal, right? Market dynamics in terms of supply chain reliability, diversification, dual manufacturing sources or network, and as well as local. Some countries require you to produce locally to access the marketplace, as well as risk mitigation. In terms of regulatory, you have ICH versus non-ICH, and you could have different ESG requirements as well as legal requirements. And lastly, and pretty important, is the ecosystem itself. I can take a manufacturing and put it in the US, but in the middle of Wyoming, no one's going to go work there, or I can put manufacturing into a global multinational city. So it's a compromise between where you want to be. If you want to be an R&D focused company, you want to be in city like Boston, where there's strong academic institutions. So knowledge matters both for R&D as well as manufacturing, right? So what are the choices and what are the consequences? So especially these days with single cycle development, where you don't have the time lag between phase 1 and phase 3, speed and cost matters. And then once the product loses exclusivity, cost is a significant driver to be competitive in the marketplace, right? So what are the drivers of cost? The drivers of cost could be labor cost, economics in terms of R&D cost, ecosystem, IP policy, and regulatory, thereby slanting towards speed during early stage of development, and then cost during late stage of development and commercial manufacturing. Now, this is a very traditional way of looking at it, right? What is the evolving world? The evolving world is, the world is flat, right? There is something called internet that happened, and then we have 5G and 6G speeds where we can actually talk to someone live anywhere in the world today. So traditionally, R&D is associated with the US and EU, and manufacturing know-how in the US and EU. But if you were to look at it, increasing share of R&D does come from what used to be called emerging markets. And then as far as the company that I represent, Enzene, we developed the continuous manufacturing technology in India, and we are putting a manufacturing facility in the US, right? So, how are we able to do that? Technology, with technology, we can bring manufacturing to the US and be cost competitive globally, right? So we become region agnostic or geography agnostic, right? So, in conclusion, rather than choosing the choice of in country versus offshoring, I would say in country and onshoring, because we have a single quality system that can be global in a digitized world. It's geography independent, harmonized, and therefore, what you want to do is to pick a flexible, adaptable, and someone who you can work with globally anywhere in the world. And geography becomes agnostic, right? So with that, that's my point on inshoring versus offshoring. It's not a choice of or, but yes and, right? So thank you. And I also want to focus on, we talk about geographies. At the end of the day, all of us are in it for the patients, right? So if you keep that in mind, your priority falls into place. Thank you.